How will the Maple Leafs fill their goaltending vacancy, and what should they do with their first round pick? Hey everyone, welcome to Inside the Leafs. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Toronto Sun Maple Leafs writers Lance Hornby and Terry Koshan. And guys, we're still a few weeks away from the draft and free agency, but the speculation continues to run rampant among Leafs fans about what Brad Treliving's plans are this offseason. We've already talked a lot about Mitch Marner, and I'm sure we'll continue to do that this summer, but one of the areas that this team does need to fill out is the goaltending position. With Ilya Samsonov, Martin Jones, and Matt Murray, all UFAs, Lance. There's a lot of chatter about Jacob Markstrom out of Calgary, who could potentially be had in a trade, or maybe a UFA like Laurent Brossoit, who could just cost the Maple Leafs money. How do you think the team should go about finding someone to team up with Joseph Woll?
Well, you're making a good point that they got no one really signed except Wall at this point. Markstrom, the link everyone's making there is his history with Brad Treliving. That doesn't necessarily make him a good fit for the Leafs, but it is probably a camp that Brad has had some good relations with over the years. He will be 35, though, midway through next season. That's something to consider. He's only played 26 total playoff games, so it becomes you're going to have to do your homework on who is a good match with Joseph Woll. I think that's and you know what happens if in the best case scenario Joseph Woll takes the ball and runs with it right at training camp, or you get a surprise like Dennis Hildeby, for example. We've seen that before with Felix Potvin. But to your point, he's not inexpensive. That is, Markstrom's got 2 years at $6 million, so that's going to be interesting. And then you go down to a longer list that starts with Cam Talbot. And as people have observed, if Cam Talbot's at the top of your list for veteran goalies, then it's not going to get much more rosier as far as that's concerned. He's 36 years old, and you have a long string of guys. You mentioned Brisson. There's also Anthony Stollers, David Riddick, that kind of thing. So it is might be a dry market for Toronto. They may be better served looking closer to home with Samsonov.
Yeah. That last point, Lance, you make, that's the funny thing in all this goaltending talk is that if when you break it all down and look at who may or may not be available, and we don't know whether Markstrom will absolutely be because it'd have to be a trade, but Samsonov might be the best option when you look at the pool, right? You can't argue that Cam Talbot would be any better. Anthony Stolarz, David Riddick, definitely not. Laurent Brossoit is probably might be the X factor here if the rumored co-interest is or mutual interest, turns out to be true. But when Samsonov has been at his best the past 2 years, he quite likely could be the best goalie available. But we'll have to see. Markstrom, $6 million a year for the next 2 seasons, like Lance alluded to. It's a hard spot for the Leafs because Joe Woll could come back and get this injury thing figured out and not be hurt and be a number one guy finally. And do you really want to pay Jacob Markstrom $6 million to play 20 games? I don't think so. Now, it's a little more palatable for the Leafs in that scenario because, Woll's coming in under $800,000 on the AAV. So that's, it's going to be, if he's the starter, it's going to be the best bargain among starting goalies in the league, hands down. So we'll have to see, but it's one of the many question marks for Brad Treliving. But again, now I'm not suggesting they're going to go and re-sign Samsonov or anything like that. If you're reading the tea leaves, it seems he will depart. But in the end, he could be the best guy that might have been available, and we're sitting right there for them. So the other thing to consider too, Markstrom at $6 million. If Marner stays, for example, and that money doesn't get cleared up, Treliving's looking at about $18-19 million. And I think the last time I checked, he had 16 people on the roster. So there's got to be other areas he's going to have to improve, certainly the blue line. And you wonder if a $6 million price tag to a goalie is a little bit much, considering he might just be a backup in the end. So one of the many decisions to make. But if Markstrom is at the top of his game, and there's no guarantee that he would be, I would trade for him. But you don't know if that's the guy you're going to get.
Yeah, there are a lot of options for the Leafs, and some of them not so great. But Jacob Markstrom, definitely one of the best available if that is indeed the case. As I mentioned, the draft coming up later this month, and the Leafs have the 23rd overall pick. They kept it and hit it out of the park last year, Terry, with their first-round selection in Easton Cowan. And you wrote about this recently, the decision that Brad Treliving has, whether to keep the pick or move it. What are the pros and cons of both paths?
Well, the pros would be you're getting to restock a cupboard that's fairly bare. I mean, once you get past Easton Cowan and Fraser Minton, the Leafs prospect pool isn't deep, and certainly you don't look at the Marlies and say, okay, player X, Y, and Z are definitely going to come in and make a real impact for them. There's some question marks there, and Minton and Calvin should be that. Certainly Calvin this year. We'll see what kind of camp Fraser Minton has, but you're going to have to start restocking it, and another first-round pick would do that for you, especially at 23 overall. Of course, at 23, there's never a guarantee. One of the cons. It's not really a con, I guess. Never a guarantee that player will make it. Just the history of that pick, most players do. Since the mid-'80s, only 2 players taken at 23 didn't play in one NHL game. So there is that. The Leafs don't really have a history there. They've only picked there 3 times, not since 92 with Grant Marshall. But you're probably going to get a player at that point, but you don't know when. And, the Leafs, if you look at it and say, oh, the Leafs need defense. Well, yeah, they do. But by the time that player develops the next couple of years, I mean, who knows what their needs will be. So we'll have to see. But, I would think that Brad Treliving's probably leaning towards keeping it. But like you said, if the right thing comes along, I would imagine that would be part of the process for them in any sort of trade. But I would think he'll keep it, but we'll see.
Well, Brad Treliving, the thing with him, Terry, and Rob, is he needs results now. So that can either be, either be moving up in the draft if he can swing that up. Hopefully make an impact choice. The Leafs need a big defenseman, obviously, if they can swing that. And obviously, if you want to improve the team right away, it's trading that pick. But to Terry's point, they don't want to be sitting on their duffs at the draft in Vegas for the first 3 or 4 rounds. I think they're going to hold that pick and use it. Interesting group of defensemen that are at the top in terms of size, and Charlie Ellick and guys like Carter Yakinchuk and that. But the interesting part there would be, they're probably not going to be around. And then you're looking at Charlie Ellick or E.J. Emery, guys like that, who are a little lower in the draft, I believe. And then, so does Toronto take a shot at those guys? Again, if we're just talking defense, if they go the old safe route, best player available, there is some talent there, as Terry says, and they might be able to ride Cowan and Minton this year and give player X a bit of a runway to make the team. And, who knows? Stranger things have happened at training camp. Certainly the Leafs are overdue for someone to, have a big breakthrough camp. It looked like Minton might be the guy last year. It will be interesting if Treliving can make it 2 in a row and do some of the work that Kyle Dubas did in landing a couple of good players in the second round.
The one thing I would add to that real quick, guys, is the Leafs don't have their first rounder next year. I think went to Chicago in the Jacob McCabe trade, and then this year, if they trade the first rounder and don't get picks back, they don't pick until the 4th round. So, like Lance alluded to, there's not really much. There won't be much for the scouting staff to do until the 4th round if the first one's gone. So another factor for Brad Treliving that I'm sure he's already taken into consideration.
Yep, a lot of decisions for Brad Treliving to make. What do you think the Maple Leafs should do with that first-round pick? Let us know in the comments section below. For Lance Hornby and Terry Koshan, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.